If you are relying on online camera reviews before you make your next purchase, you could be not only wasting your time, you could be wasting your money as well. I'll tell you why next. Hi, I'm Lynn Morton from ShutterBugLife.com, and some of these online camera reviews just make me nuts. Some of them are just unnecessarily snarky, some of them are unfairly biased, and then some of them are just plain inaccurate. And here's the thing, if this is your primary source of information before you make a significant purchase like a camera, you could be wasting your time and your money. So today I'll talk about how we can sift through the noise of all the camera reviews and make some good buying decision based on the reviewer and the review. By the way, if you're thinking about lenses and wondering which lens you should buy next, check out my free ebook download called The Ultimate Guide to Camera Lenses. I go through everything you need to know about camera lenses, how the manufacturers talk about them, what the features and benefits are of each one, what the different classes of lenses are, what they do, and then things you can use to evaluate your next lens purchase. I've got this in a 55-page ebook with lots of pictures and lots of examples. I think it can be very helpful for you because as photographers, we're always mulling our next lens purchase. And this is a resource that will help you get there. You can get to it by going to lenses.shutterbuglife.com, lenses.shutterbuglife.com. It's totally free. Go download yours today. Now, let's start with some things you should know about the reviewer. What's the bias of this person giving the review? Just because someone is a great photographer doesn't mean that their advice is good on every specific camera purchase. For instance, I've got a college buddy, Ron Pollard. He is a phenomenal photographer. I would let him photograph me with a pinhole camera if he wanted to. But I wouldn't take his advice on my next Canon purchase. Why? Ron's a Nikon shooter. He is a proud NPS member and he has been a Nikon shooter for a long time. To ask him about my next Canon purchase wouldn't be fair to him, nor would the information be reliable to me. And yet, he's a phenomenal photographer. So we have to look beyond just the talent of the person giving the review to judge whether or not they're biased. You know, sometimes I watch reviews and I see a specific photographer who's always poo-pooing one brand and always lifting up another one that can do no wrong. And I wonder if there's a bias there. And so I go to their What's in My Bag page, you know, that page where they list all their gear. And lo and behold, all of their gear is of the manufacturer that they always seem to exalt. And the ones they poo-poo is not really anything they've purchased. Now, it's not that that person couldn't give an unbiased review. It's just that they've already voted with their dollars where they think they are, which camera manufacturer they like best. And it's a personal choice, right? It doesn't make that one better than any other. It just makes it right for them. And it's an important data point for me in evaluating their reviews. How much should I take their reviews seriously? Well, I'm going to weigh that as a significant data point on whether or not I take their views on a specific camera or brand. Another thing to evaluate, did they use the camera in real-world conditions? Meaning, a lot of photographers will tell you that this is just a preview, I haven't really used it outside, and some won't. And so you have to be careful to know if they're giving you advice based on real-world conditions. Now, when you're standing in a camera store holding a camera, it's hard to really evaluate it with the salesperson breathing down your neck. I remember once there was just one camera that was coming out and I thought, oh my God, I really must have this. And I go to the camera store and I play with it. And every time I do, I get goosebumps because I think this is the one for me. But then I decided to rent it for a weekend and take it out on some photo walks. And then in real world usage, I learned some important things that threw me off. For instance, to change the mode, you have to go 2 levels deep in the menu. Yeah, if I want to go from aperture priority to shutter priority, You couldn't do that by just moving a knob on the outside of the camera. You had to go 2 levels deep into the menu. No bueno. For me, that's not a good thing. The other thing was there was another commonly used, white balance was another commonly used decision that you had to go into the menu to be able to adjust it. Now, I would not have known this if I had just gone just based on the specs of the camera or just looking at it even in a camera store. You've got to go out and try and shoot and make decisions and do different things before these kinds of issues surface for you. And so this is why you want to know if they are using the camera in real world conditions. Likewise, if a reviewer only gives me the specs of a camera, that's not interesting either. I can get that from the manufacturer's website or from some of their promotional materials. Tell me something that I can't get from just looking at the website. What's it like when you're out shooting? That's what I really want to know in a real world condition. Another helpful thing to know about the reviewer is what's their background, meaning what kind of photography do they do? What do they shoot most often? What kind of photography do they do if they're a working photographer? How do they make their money? Because that's important as well. There was a time when I was seeing a lot of camera reviews, and the reviewers were poo-pooing this specific camera based on features that just didn't seem that important to me, and I couldn't figure out why. And then it dawned on me. These are all YouTubers. That's their primary use for the camera. And so certain video features for them are either game changers or deal breakers. And for me, as a guy who shoots stills primarily, I didn't care as much. So you have to think also about what's their background and how are they thinking about the camera in terms of the way they would be using it. Is that the same way I would be using it? And sometimes the answer is no. And then you have to think, then I'm not going to pay as close attention to this specific reviewer or review. So with all that in mind, what should you be looking for in a helpful review? Well, who's it for? That's so important because when a manufacturer brings out a new camera, they usually have a very specific profile about who the camera is for. They'll even tell you in their marketing if you pay attention to it. So if a camera is made for a beginner or an entry-level shooting photographer and you're a pro, then no, it's not going to have all the features you'll want on it, nor should it, because it's not designed for you. So it's not very fair for you to be a pro and to review an entry-level camera and complain that it doesn't have pro features. That's not what it's supposed to do because that's not who it's for. The camera does what it's supposed to do for the person it's intended for. Keep that in mind when you're looking at a review or a reviewer. What problem does it solve? That's how I like to think of the features and benefits as well. What problem does it solve for me in the way I'm shooting or taking pictures? For instance, the eye detect autofocus, that served a very specific problem for me as a portrait photographer because I always want to get the eye sharply in focus, and knowing that I can just rely on the camera to lock in and all I have to do then is think about composition, boy, that solves a problem for me, and it provides a quality of life improvement that was worth it for me. Even in shooting sports, being able to track a subject that's moving pretty quickly, that solves a very specific problem. So that's something I'd want to know in a review. When you roll out new features and benefits, what problem does it solve for me? And then I can put that into context for the way I shoot to see if it's useful for me. What can I do now that I couldn't do before? I like to think about camera upgrades as something that improves the quality of my image or improves my quality of life. I have to see a significant increase in one of those two things to know that it's time to upgrade to a new camera. And sort of like I talked about in the reason before, when I see a feature that improves either my quality of life or makes my final image look so much better, then those are things I consider. Meaning, can I shoot in lower light without needing a tripod? Well, yeah, that improves my quality of life and the quality of my image. Does the dynamic range look better for a wider range? That is also an improvement in my image. And these are the kinds of things that thinking about that would be interesting to know. So, how does it improve my quality of life and how does it improve the quality of my image? These are the kinds of things that would be helpful to know when I'm thinking about a camera and I'm watching a review about a camera that I'm serious about. What's the upgrade path? Now, this one is a bugaboo for me because I see a lot of reviewers who are doing the whole horse race thing. Is Canon in trouble? Oh my God, is Nikon dead? This is a Sony killer. And then they put all three brands and the cameras in that level for all three brands, and we're gonna do a shootout with all three. And I get it. It's good clickbait, but if I'm in the market for a flagship camera, a top of the line flagship camera, I'm generally comparing it to something lower in that same manufacturer's line, and I'm thinking about upgrading to it, right? I'm not at the point where I'm going to a flagship looking at jumping over to another brand because I'm usually heavily invested in lenses at that point by the time I'm considering a flagship camera. And so I don't care how it looks against the other brand. I just want to know, is it a good upgrade from the camera of the same brand that I'm currently shooting with? If I'm shooting with an EOS R, would going to the R3 be a significant enough upgrade to warrant the money? That's the kind of thing I'm interested in, not how does the R3 go against the Z9. I don't really care how the R3 performs against the Z9 because I'm not in the market for Z9. I'm heavily invested in RF lenses at this point. And so I want to know from my own brand, is it worth the upgrade? That's an interesting thing to share in a review that I don't see that much of. I just see the horse race, is Nikon dead? No, none of them are ever going to be dead. They're just going to keep leapfrogging each other. And so let's not get caught up in that kind of nonsense. The pros and cons in context, a camera that is light and plastic is wonderful for someone who is an elderly photographer who's looking to come down to something light and who is traveling a lot and doesn't want anything heavy. It's a con if I'm a sports photographer and I'm going to be beating up my camera on the sideline of a lot of sporting events. So, what could be a feature in one setting is a con in another. So we need to get these pros and cons in context. In what context is this a pro? And in what context would that be a con? So you can't just give across the board, this is too small. Well, some people like smaller cameras, and so that would be a benefit for them. So again, the who is it for is where that would also fall into the pros and cons in context. And then the overall experience and reactions. I like that as well when I'm looking at a review. There's some things that you just don't get on a spec sheet that are still important to you. How is ergonomics? How does it feel? When you hold the camera, are the buttons in places that are easy to reach? Just silly things about the overall shooting experience. That's interesting to know as well. Again, assuming that you're shooting with it in a real world condition that is similar to the one that I would be shooting in. So these kinds of things would be also helpful for me as I'm looking, or for you as you're looking at and evaluating a camera review. So to wrap it up, if you are relying on camera reviews to make your next purchase, make sure you know the reviewer, make sure you know their background, make sure you know how they reviewed it, and make sure that you are clear on what it will do for you that you couldn't do before, whether or not it's a good upgrade for you, and how it's being used in the same context that you would be using your camera should you purchase it. All right? So that's it. Online camera reviews, some of them can be good, but you just have to be careful. Buyer beware. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me. And I hope that this is helpful for you when you start thinking about upgrading your camera and you're going through and evaluating all of the camera reviews that you see online. All right? I'll see you again next Thursday. Same place, same time. Take care.